University removes mural because it contains too many white people. Quick, someone dispatch a team of janitors with whitewash to purge all the white people painted on the Sistine Chapel. It is the only way to proactively be anti-racist. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Starting without Katie today, but hopefully we'll have her back tomorrow. Today we start at the University of Rhode Island, where a 70-year-old mural is being taken down because it has too many white people in it, literally. Yep, that's the University of Rhode Island. They announced plans to remove 2 murals depicting World War II veterans because they lack diversity and sensitivity to today's complex and painful problems. So history now has to be erased because, you see, people who died 70 years ago don't know what's going on anymore. I know this is a hard concept for you to get through, but you're not progressive enough. If this confuses you, you really ought to maybe go ahead and figure out a way to become more progressive. Because what they're telling you is, because 70 years ago, 700 years ago, 2,000 years ago, those dead poor bastards don't really understand what's happening today. You know, in their graves, moldering, they've turned to dust. They lack the analytical sufficiency to be able to comment on what's happening. Because if all those people who are dead were alive, they'd agree with progressives. Too many white people. So history now has to literally be whitewashed because those dead people, represented in art, represented in music, represented in literature, they're just not diverse enough. Even though in their world, that was not an issue. There was no way, there was nothing there to do. The fact is that because of that, we have to get rid of them. That's what it comes down to. Kathy Collins, Vice President of Student Affairs, said she received complaints, one probably, because the 2 folk art murals portraying life in the GI Bill era of the early 1950s, quote, portray a very homogeneous population, unquote, and that most of the people depicted in the murals are, quote, predominantly white, unquote. Collins also told the CBS News affiliate that some students told the school that they, quote, didn't feel comfortable sitting in that space. So if you're part of a university who has made students be convinced that to be surrounded by people with different races is an uncomfortable thing, how does that not apply to white people too? I know it's a rhetorical question. I know the answer. It's hypocrisy. But so when non-white people sit for lunch where there's a couple of murals on the wall that have a lot of white people in, that makes black people uncomfortable. So therefore we have to take it down. But if those same 2 murals were all black people and anybody else had complained, not only would they not be taken down, your uncomfortableness would have been a gotcha, it's about time, you racist. This is the world we occupy now. This administrator, Kathy Collins, cited the controversial deaths and shooting of black Americans such as George Floyd. So a 70-year-old mural has to come down because, you know, George Floyd. My God. Can you name anything in history? Any radical change in history that was blamed on something as trivial, that was blamed on something as singular as the death of George Floyd. George Floyd is the reason we have to segregate kids on college campuses. George Floyd is the reason why we can't have murals up. George Floyd is what does George Floyd have to do with that stupid mural? Nothing. Not a darn thing. So it's not the reason. George Floyd is the excuse. She cited as an excuse the controversial deaths and shooting of black Americans, such as George Floyd and Jacob Blake, as part of the decision. I think we have to recognize the horrible incidents and the tragic murders of Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and most recently Jacob Blake in Kenosha. And by the way, how many of those were actually murders? Yeah, I'm not going to wait for an answer. Because of George Floyd, your entire history has to be changed. And a second story. At the University of Oklahoma, that helps me make my point here. University of Oklahoma removes tribute to retired faculty because they're white. There's a wall on the pictures on the wall there of winners of awards, winners of of members of the faculty who have achieved attainment. Their pictures are there, and because they're white, they're threatening. Now again, go back one last picture. So it's in the hallway. You walk past it. How often do you think anybody walking down that hallway stops? Any kid on the way to class who doesn't have her head buried in her cell phone with her earplugs in, right, listening to music. How many people do you think actually walk down that hallway and ever stop to look at those pictures? The University of Oklahoma removed a tribute wall that was dedicated to retired faculty in the political science department over concerns that it was not sufficiently diverse. According to an open letter, the tribute was removed because it was, quote, quote, exclusively includes white male faces. Yeah, that's the problem. According to the report by Campus Reform, the University of Oklahoma announced this week that it will be removing a tribute wall that was dedicated to retired members of the political science department. This is part of a larger push on the campus to implement changes designed to enhance diversity and inclusion. Well, as we've said 1,000 times on this show, diversity means making it less diverse, and inclusion means excluding, right? That's what it means. So let's exclude these retired faculty members. Again, their history, right? Their history. History has to be whitewashed. If history is white or includes white or has a white stamp on it or is involved with white people, it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive history. Here's the statement, we will transform the entryway to our department on the second floor of Dale Hall Tower. One of the walls of this entry includes the images of retired members of our department, a set that exclusively includes white male faces. Again, the contributions to the university of those people are now moot because they had the wrong facial color. This will be replaced with a space in which our current students can express themselves and represent their own voices. Now, that has to mean not including white kids, right? The majority of kids who go to the University of Oklahoma are white. When you say the new space will be replaced with a space in which our current students can express themselves and represent their own voices, by definition, they cannot be white students and they cannot be white voices. That's what you just took out. So in other words, call it what it is. We're going to change this space by making it black instead of white in the name of diversity, right? See the problem there? And then we're going to change it to black and white in the name of diversity, and we're doing it so we can include people. And protest marches that aren't mostly black also aren't legitimate protest marches in places like Wisconsin. We've been to Oklahoma already today, and now we're in Wisconsin, and what do we find? The University of Wisconsin-Madison, one of the more screwy leftist places in the country, students decided they were going to march for diversity, but then were horrified when there are too many white people. So white people are the problem. As we learned yesterday, white people are fragile. When white people don't agree with everything radical leftists say about race, we're fragile. So here you got a bunch of white kids who turned out in the streets to protest racial bigotry, and they were treated as racially bigoted. To kick off the fall semester back in September, a couple months ago here in Madison, Wisconsin, the UW-Madison decided that there would be a march for diversity. About 250 students and student athletes marched to show how the campus is not a comfortable place for students of color. Now, 250 kids in a campus of tens of thousands is surprisingly not many, and most of those were white. What percentage of the basketball team is black, do you think? Don't answer that, it's racist. How many black football players are there on scholarship versus white ones? Don't answer that. Now, this was a march that was attended by many students and many athletes. How come there were so few black people there? Were they afraid to march with white people? Would the entire Black Athlete Association of Wisconsin-Madison, which is a huge number, would they have turned out if there were no white people? How come this had to be a white march? Where are all the black minority kids at UW-Madison? To kick off the semester, UW-Madison decided to march for diversity. About 250 students and student athletes marched to show how the campus is not a comfortable place for students of color. Maybe the march itself scared them away. The event, the Unite Rally for Diversity on UW campus, was organized by UW's athletic department and the Black Student Union. So athletics and the Black Student Union, with all due respect, that's where you're going to find most black people at UW-Madison. And they were mad because so many white people turned out. My God, you white people ruin everything. You're the problem. You're the one who should stand. Silence is violence. Isn't that what we've heard? Silence is violence from white people. So when they march alongside their multicultural brothers and sisters and protest racism, the whole thing is a wash because, you know, their white presence is racism. Protesters were all black and donned masks at the event, which included marches and speeches. Samwad Kawi, a recent graduate and former UW basketball player, said, "Since my first year here, I realized that this campus was not for me. Our demand is to bring diversity, inclusion, and black students and POC, people of color, to the campus with a $2 million scholarship." That's what he said. That's his words. I don't know if it makes any sense. We're going to bring black students and POC to campus with a $2 million scholarship. I'm sure he doesn't mean you're going to give everybody $2 million, but this day and age, you don't know. Specifically, the group of students demanded the athletic department create a $2 million annual scholarship to help 40 additional black students per year attend UW-Madison by funding their tuition, housing, books, and free. So basically, find black people, pay for their complete education because, you know, diversity. Senior quarterback Jack Cohn of the football team, who's white, said there are too many white students. All you see is white people. Okay, how much time, Jack, do you spend outside of the football complex? You are a starting quarterback at a Division I school. You dorm with the football players. You eat with the football players. You travel with the football players. You take classes full of football players designed for you. Your tutors are football scholarship people. So how much time, Jack White Cone, do you spend outside of the sporting complex? Almost none. And I guarantee you that at the sporting complex you inhabit, there are at least as many black people as white people. So your big gripe is that you see black people all the time as athletes. But when you're outside of that situation, you don't see enough. Jack, you've been brainwashed, my friend. Jack, I get why you say what you say, but you were just told by the black administrators of this rally that you're too white too. Take that back to your locker room. Go ahead, take it back to the locker room. See what kind of cohesion and unity you have as a football team. Do it. Make the football team carry on the way the campus carries on. Continuing now our theme for this day, the racist nature of anti-racist education, pedagogy, and theory. We have a really odd story. So this story is from the Midwest. It's from Oberlin University, Oberlin College, I should say. And you may remember Oberlin from a huge brouhaha the last year where they got sued and lost for discrimination when the university tried to destroy a little coffee house because a couple of black kids were arrested shoplifting. You may remember that story. This is a incredibly left-wing, smug, arrogant, intolerant, typical little expensive liberal arts college in the middle of Ohio. So let's get this straight. What happened at Oberlin? A former Oberlin college professor is suing after she says she was denied a tenure-track position because of her race, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, and the fact that she had a husband, literally. She was told this is what gets me. Back in the old racist days, you wouldn't not hire somebody and then say it's because you're black. Because to do that was to open yourself up to trouble. So arrogant are these modern day racists that they have no problem looking you in the eye and say, I can't hire you, I won't hire you because you're white, because you're straight, because you're married to a man. Maybe if you had a wife instead of a husband, we'd consider you. I mean, they don't even care that they're discriminating. It's a feature of modern anti-racist funding, right? Anti-racist tactics is to be racist. So this former Oberlin College professor is suing after she says she was denied a tenure-track position because she was white, straight, and married. Alice Blumenfeld, a former visiting professor of dance, filed the lawsuit alleging discrimination after she says Oberlin Dance Department Chair Ann Cooper Albright, who, by the way, is also white, told her on July 7th, 2019, that she couldn't be hired because she was just another white woman from the Midwest with a husband. Just another. Where are the feminists? Where in the world? Feminist! Paging all feminists! Oh, Tara Reid, I forgot. Feminism died when Gropey Joe was not, the media would even discuss the potential rape of Tara Reid. That killed #Me Too. I should have known better. When Trump was talking about groping women, that was real rape. When Joe Biden was groping actual women, well, #Me Too went the way of Alyssa Milano down the rabbit hole. So I guess there are no feminists left to fight for her. The lawsuit alleges, quote, Miss Albright, acting individually and in her capacity as chair of Oberlin's dance department, effectively rejected Mrs. Blumenfeld for the new tenure-track position, not because of her accomplishments, her skill, her experiences, her work ethic, or her individual and personal qualities, but instead because of her race, the color of her skin, her sex, her sexual orientation, her national orientation, and her ancestry. I mean, this is textbook. This is 1964 Title IX violation, right? You're not hiring her, and you're looking her in the eye. I mean, what a lawyer's dream this is. You're looking her in the eye and telling her, can't hire him because you're white, female, where your ancestors came from, Europe, your husband, can't hire you. The lawsuit continues. While Mrs. Blumenfeld was more than qualified for the tenure-track position than the individual Oberlin hired, she failed to meet the identity-based qualifications that the defendants required, which included qualifications based upon race, skin color, sex, sexual orientation, marriage status, and national origin and ancestry. Blumenfeld's position was terminated on June 30th of this year. The lawsuit names Oberlin College, Albright, and Mosley as defendants and seeks damages in excess of $25,000 for discrimination on race and color, discrimination based on sex and sexual orientation, discrimination based on national origin and ancestry, and retaliation, negligent hiring, retention. $25,000. To me, that's the thing that jumps out at me. $25K ain't even going to cover your legal fees, is it? $25,000. I mean, again, to play whataboutism, but if this was a black dancer who was told the same thing, I just can't hire you because you're black, you're gay, you're married to a woman, your ancestors came from Africa, I can't hire you. That $25,000 would be $25 million or $250 million. Oberlin, as I mentioned at the outset of the story, is also home to the famous bakery incident where school officials had students protest at a small bakery because of made-up racist claims. Oberlin had to pay tens of millions of dollars. You think if Oberlin were smart, rather than letting this go to court where they will lose and ultimately end up having to pay more than $25K, if they're smart, which they're not, they would pay her the $25K. That's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. Pay her the $25K to go away. If this goes to court, you're going to lose. It's going to cost you a lot more. How much do you want to bet that in the end, Oberlin will go to court? It's time again now for some real education. Francois Duc de la Rochefoucauld was a noted French moralist and the author of Maxims and Memoirs. He is part of a literary movement of classicism, the revival of classicism in the 17th century, and is best known for his maxims. So Francois, the Duc de la Rochefoucauld, was a noted French moralist and author. He was born in 1613. He died in 1680. He really was a well-known person in his age, and some of his maxims, his small, pithy statements of human nature have been popular for hundreds of years. Very wise man. He was part of a literary movement of classicism, the revival of the classical world in the 16th and the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Although he only officially published two works, the Memoirs and the Maxims, his literary production is dense. These are both really big works. Born in Paris in 1613, at a time when the royal court was vacillating between helping the nobility and threatening it, he was considered an exemplar of the accomplished 17th century nobleman. In 1650, he bore the title Prince de Marillac. He bore the title of Prince de Marsillac. His great-grandfather, Francois III, Count de la Rochefoucauld, was killed, actually, in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in the 16th century, which targeted and killed Huguenots. And so Rochefoucauld is his maxims have a long reach down through Western culture since the 17th century. I'll just share a few with you so you can get a little taste of the man's wisdom. Absence, Rochefoucauld wrote, absence diminishes small loves and increases great ones. As the wind blows out the candle, but fans the bonfire. That's beautiful. Absence from one you love. If your love is small, absence will remove love. But to those loves which are real loves, absence increases them. It's the difference between the little wind that blows out the candle and the big wind that fans the fire of heat. How about this one? When we are unable to find tranquility within ourselves, it is useless to seek it elsewhere. I love that. It's very Christian, and as was Rochefoucauld, but it's also very Zen. If you need tranquility, and we all do, if you need peace of mind, if what you need is serenity, it is useless to find it anywhere else than yourself. Only you can find it. Tranquility, serenity, peace of mind, they are things that have to come from within you. If you are scouring the world to find it, you're never going to find it. It's not something that comes first from the outside. One has to become tranquil, serene, accepting of his or her circumstances before you can have peace. And if it's not coming from within, it's not coming anywhere. The third maxim makes a similar point. Before we set our hearts too much upon anything, let us examine how happy those are who already possess it. You think a big house is going to make you happy? Well, look at the people who live in big houses. They're as unhappy and miserable as you are. You think a fast car is going to make you happy? Look at people who drive fast cars. They're the first ones to get mad and engage road rage if you happen to cut in front of them. Before we set our hearts too much upon anything, let us examine how happy those are who already profess it. You want fame? See how happy Hollywood is with all its fame, with their ranting and raving. They're just vitriolic, screaming and swearing about the state of the country. That's the kind of fame you want? And this last one's one of my favorites. Thinkers think and doers do. But until thinkers do and the doers think, progress will be just another word in the already overburdened vocabulary by sense. Until thinkers don't just think, they act, and until doers don't just do, but they think as well, nothing's ever going to get done. It's the difference between practical and academic. Stay away from the academic. All right, just a reminder, these premier beverage vessels of freedom are keeping this show going. Please consider joining the Patriot Club with a $99 tax-deductible donation, and we'll be sure to ship you a tumbler. Freedom never tasted so good. Visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now, let's wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. In World War II, British soldiers received a ration of 3 sheets of toilet paper per day. 3 sheets. The Americans in that war had 22 sheets. So therefore, we can thank our liberties and our freedoms on having clean bottoms. I'm Dr. Duke. Until next time, stay wiped, my friends.